And by the way, it's time for colleges and universities to get serious about cutting their own costs, because they too have a responsibility to help solve this problem.
And now live from Capitol Hill, Congressman Mike Honda of California. He is a member of the Appropriations Committee's Education Subcommittee. Before coming to Congress, he spent 30 years as an educator, a science teacher, and also a principal at 2 public schools, and conducted educational research at Stanford University. So he brings all of that experience to bear in his work on Capitol Hill. Mr. Honda, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Susan.
Well, what did you think of the messaging? In the clip we pulled, the president was talking about colleges and universities. Is that where the focus should be in your mind on education in the year ahead?
Well, he not only focused on college, but he said and he acknowledged that college education is really a very expensive thing to do, and I know a lot of students who have avoided going to college right away because they were afraid of the debt that was going to be incurred upon them. So he touched on a couple of things quickly, that there were financial institutions in the last administration that made money and profited off of the financial institution and financial loans that students were taking. And we changed that right away. We also said to our parents that, you know, when your students go to college, you get a $10,000 tax credit. And on top of that, we've increased the Pell Grant amount and the number of Pell Grants available for our students, so that the fear of a debt will not keep them from pursuing a higher education. Then he turned his attention to the other areas of education that both Democrats and Republicans have consensus on, and that was to reform what we used to call No Child Left Behind.
And No Child Left Behind is going through, in Washington parlance, a reauthorization program. It'll be revisited, and questions raised about the programmatic aspects as well as continued funding. What are the major areas that you'd like to see fixed about the No Child Left Behind law?
Well, I think everybody agrees that the premise of No Child Left Behind was to look at assessment and accountability of our instructional system. And I think that everybody agrees that that's not a bad thing. But what we did was, it was set up in such a way that the final achievement was more important than paying attention to the achievement of each child as we go through. So people were looking at what the grades might be at the end, rather than making sure that each child had the kind of attention that they needed. So it was really about teaching to a test, putting too much pressure on the outcomes rather than looking at daily outcomes that a child needs. I've been a principal of a couple of Title I schools, and I know that progress is made every day and assessment is made every day. What the president wants to do is what they call a race to the top. Now, when he says that, he doesn't mean that there's going to be losers, and that, you know, the race is to make sure that we have our youngsters realize their potential, and that each child realize their potential, so that at the end of the day, every child is achieving towards that point of attainment of the skills that each child is going to need. There's a difference between saying all children and each child, and I think parents would appreciate that.
Well, we're going to get to calls and viewer comments. Let me start with this one by Twitter from Kybell Wilson, who writes, "Until the economy is fixed, there's no need for anyone graduating from high school or college." What's the link between jobs and education in your mind?
Well, it's a little short-sighted, and it's like saying, in order to grow my business, I'm not going to put any more money into it, and I'm going to have it grow without any investments. I think education, we all know, is the investment that we want to make in our children and in our system. You know, the president said that the best anti-poverty program in the 21st century is a world-class education. Having said that, you know, we know that the programs that we have to pay attention to each child, and he's putting out there that carrot, you know, don't be afraid of going to college, don't be afraid of achieving, because you don't have to worry about debts and things like that. You know, as a parent, I realized a 36% increase in my youngsters' college tuition in 1 year. And most parents cannot afford that. and a lot of students, in order not to incur that, prefer to go to work or find other ways of making a living and cutting off that potential that they could realize if they had that path open to them. It's short-sighted.
Let's get to some calls here. Saginaw, Michigan. Marva, Democrats line. Marva, you're on the air for Mr. Honda.
I agree with Mr. Honda, and I agree with President Obama, especially in our inner cities. I've known children not even to get the college prep classes, let alone have the money to. If they don't have the foundation, how are they going to go to college? They drop out because they don't understand. They just pass them. It's not, there is a disparity in this country, and children do need proper education to become productive citizens in this country. I agree with you, Mr. Honda, and I support our president 100%.
Thank you, Marva. Mr. Honda.
Thank you, Marva. And, I couldn't agree more. And parents, regardless of what zip code they live in, they all want to have their child succeed, and they all want to have their child have the proper investment in them. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Even in a good, well-established neighborhood, resources are not distributed equitably. And I think that that's one of the things that we as educators, we as parents, and we as school board members have to ask ourselves, are the distribution of our resources equitable? Not the pursuit of getting the same amount of money behind each child. That's parity. And so if you have parity, you're saying that every child has the same needs. We know that that's not true. And so we have to really invest in each child according to their needs. And it should not be dependent upon what neighborhood they live in, but it should be dependent upon the potential that we recognize and then put the money behind that.
Next question comes from Battle Creek, Michigan. This is Dorothy, Republican line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What I would like to say is one of the things that they need to do with children is they need to have more time spent visiting the colleges throughout their high school years, because it does not matter what the president offers. There is so much intimidation, and the other callers said disparity. That is correct. There are children who don't even know how to go to college because the children, the families with money are always the ones that are looked upon, and always it seems that they are the ones that the school counselors and the teachers get their eye on, and they're the ones they promote along. I think the kids should be assigned at least once a month throughout their high school years to go either observe a college room, different ones, to see what they'd like to do, and to see where it is that they could really win, and then sit down with counselors and be explained way back in the 9th grade what all these things mean to get them ready to go. And then the president is right on with giving the families a break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh boy, Dorothy, you're so right on. When you said that youngsters need to be exposed to college campuses or what goes on in the higher education post high school, I remember when this is back in 58, 59 when I graduated from high school. I didn't realize I was biking myself through a campus and that it was a university. And I didn't have a link between my daily life and what was out there ahead of us. And I think that sort of sharpens a youngster's vision for the future, and it tells them that, you can be there too. Visiting community colleges, visiting high schools from 8th grade, looking at the next step, I think, is a very well thought out process, and a lot of times, as you pointed out, it's a piece that we really miss and sometimes take for granted.
Mr. Honda, thank you for spending some time with us on education in reaction to the President's State of the Union
Well, thank
address.
you very much. I appreciate it.
We appreciate your time this morning.